Welcome everyone. Dear students, I know you all are preparing for your practical exam. So here is an effort to help you with the same. So let us see that how we are going to write in the practical sheet. The sheet will look like this. Okay. On the front side, you have to give all your details, write your board roll number and all the required details correctly. And when you open the first page, then there are three experiments that are to be written here, as you can see on the sheet. So write the aim of all the experiments here. 1, 2, 3. Every year, titration and salt analysis, they are fixed. They are mandatory. Even if you see the CBSE curriculum, you would know that these two experiments are always there. There are two titrations in your syllabus. One is more salt titration and the other is oxalic acid titration. So anyone can be given. I am taking as an example the more salt titration here. So I have written this aim as experiment number 1 and experiment number 2 would be salt analysis. And third experiment may be any other minor experiment, that may be chromatography, functional group test, food test, that is for protein, fats, carbohydrates, etc. Or it may be ferric hydroxide salt. Any one of these will come. Any one can be given by the examiner. So these are the three experiments. So this left hand side, this first page, we are using to write the whole question paper. Okay, so we are writing the aim of all the three experiments here exactly in this manner. So whatever is given to you on your exam day, you just write the experiments aim on this side. Then on the right hand side, you start writing about the experiments. Experiment number 1. I'm not writing aim again because it is already here. So no need to write. You can straight away start with apparatus or material required. So you will write the material required here. You need measuring flask, weighing bottle, all this you have already written in your file. So I'm just giving you an idea that how to practice, how to write perfectly in the sheet. Okay, so you will write the apparatus and material required, all these chemicals. Theory is very important. So instead of writing a full paragraph, you can simply write the reaction between KMnO4 and Mohr salt. I'm specifying only one titration here. You can practice writing the other titration in the same manner. So this is a redox reaction. That's why the titration is called redox titration. Oxidizing agent is potassium permanganate, KMnO4. Reducing agent is Mohr salt in this case. And indicator, we all know that in both these titrations, KMnO4 is the self-indicator. Now the question comes, why or how we are saying that KMnO4 is a self-indicator? What does it mean? So in this presentation, I'll keep talking about simple Viva questions also. So we say that KMnO4 is a self-indicator because if you see the reaction, then KMnO4 in acidic medium is converting to Mn2 plus. KMnO4 is having pink color, dark pink, and Mn2 plus is colorless. So because when I'm carrying out the titration, what is happening at the end point means when the quantity of more salt solution that I'm taking in whatever concentration that has completely reacted with KMnO4 and this last one drop of KMnO4 is extra, that pink color of KMnO4 will not fade away, it will stay. That is the end point. Sometimes students have this in mind that Mohr salt is changing from colorless to pink. No, not at all. It is the color of KMnO4. Okay, and we are taking acidic medium. So here KMnO4 is changing to Mn2 plus, which is colorless. One more question that if you see the configuration of Mn, 7 plus ion, if you find out the oxidation state of Mn, it will be plus 7 here. Plus 7 means highest oxidation state. So if there are no electrons in Mn in the form of Mn plus 7, then how is it colored? How can it show DD transition then, which we have done in the DNF block chapter? So the answer to that is there is a charge transfer from the oxygens which are attached to Mn. And because of that charge transfer, the electrons get transferred and the color comes. That is why KMnO4, in spite of having Mn in the highest oxidation state, is having color. Now here are the equations which are to be written in the theory only. You should not waste any space in your board sheet. The sheet which comes officially from CBSE, according to your board roll number, that is only one. It cannot be replaced. Try to manage in that sheet only. It has many pages. You can easily write 3 experiments if you write systematically without wasting any space. But it should not be like that you are stuffing everything. You can take extra sheet. That's not a problem. Okay, but try to complete everything in that sheet. Here I have taken more space because I need to explain each and every point to you. But when you are writing that, then please write properly systematically. Okay, so when you write the theory part, which I just discussed, this is a part of that only. Ionic equations are to be given. You have written molecular equation also in your files that may be considered in Viva, may be asked. But here in this sheet, you will not write molecular equation. You will only write ionic equations. There are two parts of any redox reaction, the reduction half and oxidation half. Okay, so we are going to write them like this. Permanganate ion, KMnO4, K plus is removed because I have to write in the form of ions. And acidic medium, it is converting to Mn2 plus. That means it is taking 5 electrons. Okay, and plus 7, Mn plus 7 is changing to plus 2. You don't need to write all this. I'm just explaining so that you are preparing for Viva also side by side. Right, so you balance this equation, and same way Fe2 plus from Mohr salt is changing to Fe3 plus. So it is losing 1 electron. This is oxidation half. Loss of electron is oxidation. You need to multiply this equation by 5 so that you make the electrons gained and lost equal. And when you add these two equations, this is the net ionic equation. Write it as it is. This will complete the theory part. Now, Mohr salt. What kind of substance is this? It's a double salt. If you see the formula, FeSO4 dot NH4 whole twice SO4 ferrous sulfate ammonium sulfate and dot 6H2O hydrated form. This is a double salt. A double salt, when you put it in water, it gives you all the ions which are present in it. It will give you Fe2 plus, ammonium ions, sulfate ions, but it is totally different from a complex or coordinate compound. You have done that in that chapter. In the coordination compounds, the coordinate bond, the dative bond which is formed between the ligand and the metal or metal ion in the center, that gives you a coordination entity which we write in the square bracket. So that does not dissociate completely. Whatever is inside the coordination sphere, coordination entity, that remains as one ion, and whatever is the counter ion outside the square bracket, that is dissociated separately. What I mean to say, if you have some chloride inside the square bracket and chloride outside the square bracket, then the one which is inside the square bracket is not going to convert to ions. Why? Because it is making a covalent dative coordinate bond with the metal or metal ion in the center. But the ions which are outside, if chlorides are outside the square bracket, if two chlorides are outside, they are definitely going to give you Cl minus ions when you put it in water, because that is not making the coordinate bond with the atom in the center. So after this, we have to write the preparation of, this is the first part of the experiment. If you see the first slide where I have written the aim. This is part A, preparation of 250 ml of m by 20 Mohr salt solution. Now it is not fixed that it will always be m by 20. It will always be 250. It can be 100 ml, it can be m by 10, m by 40, any molarity. We must know how to do the calculations, and that is very easy thing to do because we have done this in class 11th first chapter. What is molarity? It is number of moles of solute, which is more salt here, divided by volume of solution in liters. So here we know that we have to make 1 by 20 in this case. This is an example to tell you, right? So if you have to make 1 by 20, molarity is equal to moles of solute. Moles of solute would be weight of solute, given mass by molar mass we say. So weight of the solute, which I need for making this 250 ml 1 by 20, and 392 is the molar mass of Mohr salt. You can remember it. 392 grams per mole is the molar mass of Mohr salt, and divided by volume of solution in liters. We have to make 250 ml. So how do we convert ml to liters? Just divide 250 by 1000. Then you rearrange this equation, this expression, and you will get weight of solute is equal to, everyone can do this, and when you solve this you are going to get 4.9 grams. I'm repeating that it is not necessary that everywhere it will be m by 20 molar salt and 250 ml. It may be 100 ml or 250 ml. It may be m by 10, m by 20, m by 40, any molarity. But calculation part is not difficult at all. So here, this calculation is only for first part, that is preparation of 250 ml of the standard Mohr salt solution. Then you will simply write in brief that 4.9 grams that you have calculated here of Mohr salt is weighed and transferred to the standard measuring flask. 1 test tube of dilute sulfuric acid. This will be made separately, very, very dilute. You will not take it from the shelf. Be very clear. It is made separately so that when you add it, it's a very common question in Viva that why do we add the dilute sulfuric acid while making the standard solution of Mohr salt? But in oxalic acid, we do not add this here while preparing. We add acid while carrying out the titration in the flask. When we take 10 ml of Mohr salt or oxalic, there we always add sulfuric acid, dilute 1 test tube because we need acidic medium. But while preparing the solution, only in case of Mohr salt, acid is added because you know that sulfuric acid is a dehydrating agent. So what will it do? It will prevent the hydrolysis of the salt, because I want salt to remain in its original form and then I want to carry out the titration. So while making the solution, it should not hydrolyze. That is the reason. Why do we add dilute sulfuric acid while preparing the standard solution? To prevent or check the hydrolysis of Mohr salt. So you will write 4.9 grams of Mohr salt is weighed and transferred to the standard measuring flask, that is 250 ml flask, because we have to make 250 ml here. And these measuring flasks, they have a mark on the long neck. If you fill liquid till that mark, it becomes 250 ml here. Okay, so initially you will not add till the mark. You will add lesser quantity of water, say roughly 100 ml. No need to measure it, roughly 100 ml. But remember, after adding the dilute sulfuric acid, reason you know now. So this you will add and you will shake that flask so that the contents are nicely mixed, and then add more water slowly to make the volume 250 ml. Slowly towards the end when you reach that neck portion. Because there, if you do it hurriedly, what's going to happen? You will cross that mark on the neck. It will be more than 250 ml. So it is not what I wanted to make, and I will never get proper readings. Okay, so we should know the procedure exactly what is to be done. Even if the solutions are provided to us, procedure we should know, because this is how we write in the file exactly like this. Then no procedure is to be written for carrying out the titration. Remember that no procedure is to be written. Immediately after the preparation of solution part, you will make the observation table, and please make observation table nicely using pencil and scale. Then first column will be serial number, second will be volume of Mohr salt solution. That will we will always take 10 ml for one reading, isn't it? So you will write 10 here everywhere, and then fill. You must have filled the burette with KMnO4 till 0. So initial reading is 0 here. You have done it in the lab. You already know what is to be done. So suppose you are getting 5 ml here, then the volume of KMnO4 will be final reading minus initial 5. And second reading, this final reading for the first set will be the initial for the second. When we perform it, we know how to write it. So suppose whatever you are getting here, 5 is the concordant reading. Now next question, what is concordant reading? If you get exactly same reading in continuation, consecutive readings, then that is concordant reading. So if I get 5 two times, I'm not saying that in every case your answer will be 5. It depends upon the strength of both the solutions, KMnO4 as well as the Mohr salt solution. But suppose if it is 5 and I'm getting this 5 twice, I get 10 here, again I subtract, again it is 5. So this is the concordant reading. If I don't get in first two sets, I'll keep on carrying out it again and again till I get the concordant readings. Okay, so suppose I get the concordant readings as 5. Minimum 3 readings are to be taken. If you are getting 5 in the first two, so there is no harm, quickly take the third one also. So these are the calculations. Please don't get confused. These are the calculations which are to be done after performing the titration, because using the values in the table, I'm going to calculate the molarity of KMnO4. Earlier also there were calculations. They were for the calculations were basically for finding out the weight of Mohr salt which is required to make 250 ml of M by 20. So that is mandatory, that is required, that is the first part. If we make the solution, only then we can carry out the titration. Okay, so here molarity into volume of KMnO4 divided by 2 and molarity into volume of Mohr salt divided by 10. You can take this as simple ratio 1 by 5 also. If you see the molecular equation in your file, you will notice that 2 moles of KMnO4 reacting with 10 moles of Mohr salt, or 1 mole reacts with 5 moles. And these 1 and 5 are there in the net ionic equations also, the electrons which are involved in the oxidation and reduction. So this is required here. And then you just shuffle, just rearrange the expression. You can calculate the molarity of KMnO4. So write the expression properly like this and then put the values. Molarity of Mohr salt we already know, 1 by 20. M by 20 was there, that means 1 by 20 molar, multiplied by volume of Mohr salt. So every time we were taking 10 ml of Mohr salt in the flask, multiplied by 2, which is already there in the expression, n factor, how many electrons are lost or gained when you balance. This is that number, 10, multiplied by volume of KMnO4. So volume of KMnO4 means the concordant reading. So that was 5 in this particular case, which I am giving you as an example. Now when you solve it, you will simply get 1 by 50. Easy, simple calculation. Everybody can do the calculation part. So here I will be getting 1 by 50. So this 1 by 50 is the molarity of KMnO4. This is the first part of calculation which is here required here. Now the strength of KMnO4. Molarity of KMnO4 multiplied by the molar mass of KMnO4, that is 158 gram. You can remember this also. And simply when you multiply, this will be 1 by 50 multiplied by 158 and you will get the required answer around 3.16. 15.8 divided by 5. And always write the units, gram per liter. You should never forget it. Otherwise you might lose marks. Okay. Now, a very common mistake which I am noticing for years, that students, when it comes to volume of Mohr salt, here This is a blunder which I'm going to tell you. They write 250. Why? Because 250 ml of Mohor salt was to be made. So be very careful. You cannot write 250 here because this we are calculating on the basis of a single set titration that we carried out. That's why concordant reading we are taking. Another blunder. Never ever take average of the readings which you are getting. That's a blunder. Don't take average. You have to take exactly same reading which is coming in continuation twice at least. That is concordant reading. So here we got 5. And then you report the result. The language of the result is always uh, based on the language of the aim. So if you see the aim, you will notice that to prepare 250 ml of M by 20. So you write that 250 ml of M by 20 Mohor salt standard solution is prepared and used to determine the molarity and strength of given caminophore solution. B part, the molarity and strength of given caminophore solution is, so molarity is 1 by 50, okay, and strength is, if you do the calculation, 3.16. Don't forget units, grams per liter. Now the last part, generally 2 precautions are asked. I am discussing 4 here, so you can write any 2. And they are common for both the titrations. There should be no air bubbles in the burette because that will obviously affect your reading. Solution from the burette should be added in drops and should not run too fast. In drops does not mean one drop at a time. In the beginning, it may be a few drops together, but should not be very fast because sometimes the endpoint is reached very soon and then you get confused. So it will be very, very light pink color. That will be the perfect endpoint. You know it. Always read the upper meniscus in case of colored solution because lower will not be visible to you, and lower in case of colorless. And titration flask should not be rinsed every time. Why? Every time means I am carrying out using 10 ml first reading I am taking, and then I am washing the flask again with water, and some water will always remain in the flask. So when I add next 10 ml for the second reading, I will never get the same reading because that water which remained inside the flask, that will mix with the Mohor salt and dilute it. So you will never get the same reading because again and again you'll keep on diluting it. So don't wash the flask after every reading. Just throw the contents completely in the sink and then take 10 ml of Mohor salt again, add 1 test tube of dilute sulfuric acid, and then again take the next reading till you get the concordant readings. This is all about the first experiment. Second experiment, as I told you, is going to be salt analysis. So you do not need to write any equations in salt analysis. You just have to make a table having these 4 columns. This column can be left. There is no need. It's okay. You can simply, as you have written in your files, it's your choice actually. If you want to make 4 columns or 3, if you are making 3 like made in file, then write experiment, observation, inference, and then put the number here only. Like first, this is the first one. Small quantity of salt is taken in a dry test tube and 4-5 ml of dilute sulfuric acid added. I hope you can see here this is acidic radical or anion. Acidic radicals are also called anions and basic radicals are also called cation. So we always test for anions first. How do we start for anions? We add dilute sulfuric acid to dry salt. Remember, never add to the aqueous solution. You will not get the results. That's again a big mistake. So always take small quantity of every chemical, dry salt in a dry test tube, and add a few drops of dilute sulfuric acid on it. If you see any fumes, if you see effervescence, as I have taken the example here, that suppose I got a salt, I added this and I got brisk effervescence. So it may be carbonate because that is the preliminary test for carbonate, that is the indication. Then the gas which is evolved here, you can collect it or you can make use of the W tube that you have seen in the lab. and pass it through lime water. Lime water turns milky, so we say that carbonate is confirmed. But I suggest that always carry out this test, magnesium sulfate, because sometimes the lime water does not give you proper results. Reason being, we are not able to trap CO2 properly, and then we get confused. So one thing is effervescence. You get the brisk means very fast bubbles are evolved because of the CO2 which is coming out, and then you pass it through lime water. Another confirmatory is to the aqueous solution. Now we are taking aqueous solution. To the aqueous solution of the salt, add magnesium sulfate solution. It will give you a white precipitate. So this confirms carbonate. So when you get carbonate, always write this. Now we are halfway through the salt. I got a salt and I was lucky enough that I got carbonate. You can get any ion. It's not necessary that you will get carbonate only, but this is how you write. Okay. Here I tried the first step and I got carbonate, so I don't need to write any negative tests. Okay. I just did this. This is the first one. And then the gas evolved was passed through lime water. This you can write as a separate step or the first step only, and then this. So once I have done this, now I will start with the basic radical. Basic radical is also called cation. So you can write cation or basic radical, any one thing. Same table, no need of a separate table. Just continue in this. Just mention here cation test or as basic radical test. Then always start with zero group. The cations group are made on the basis of some basic properties. So I cannot just see the salt and say, oh, it looks like magnesium. Let me try Mg2 plus first. No, never ever do it. Always follow systematic scheme that is given to you. In 11th, we did the one, we always do, individual ions. First, we do all the anions one by one and then cations, and then we apply all that. So how these groups are made? A very common question in bio. That zero group, what is the concept of zero group? Zero group has NH4 plus ion, ammonium ion. So ammonium ion, its salts have very, very high Ksp, so you do not get the precipitate easily. So it is separately kept in a group. And if you see the other ions, Pb2 plus, Mn2 plus, Mg2 plus, Fe3 plus, Al3 plus, they all are metallic ions. But NH4 plus has nitrogen and hydrogen. It's a complex anion. It is not having any metal. So that's why its group is totally separate. Okay. And then group 1 to 6, they are made on the basis of Ksp, solubility product. When you move from 1 to 6, the solubility product Ksp increases. That means, take an example. For second group, I take H2S in acidic medium. And for fourth group, I take H2S only. That means those cations are also precipitated as sulfide, but I take basic medium. Now understand the difference. Second group, I'm saying that when you move from first to sixth, the solubility product increases. So to precipitate the cations in the form of their sulfide for group 4, the Ksp is higher. I need more quantity of S2 minus. But for second group, I don't need that much quantity. So in second group, if I am taking acidic medium, H plus is there in acid and H2S that we are using, there also you have H plus. So because of common ion, the dissociation of H2S will decrease. This you have done in equilibrium chapter. The dissociation of H2S will decrease, the quantity of S2 minus will decrease, and it will precipitate only group 2 cations. If group 4 cation is present, it will not be able to give you the precipitate of its sulfide. So this is how the groups are made. Group 1 to 6, they are on the basis of increasing Ksp. Okay. So group 0 and group 6, these are the two groups which do not have any group reagent. Now the question comes, what are group reagents? A group reagent is that chemical or those chemicals which you use in the beginning when you want to find out that whether this group is present there or not. You add that reagent, and if it gives you the preliminary test, like for group 1, I take aqueous solution and add dilute HCl. If I get the white precipitate, I'll go further. for confirmatory test. If I don't get the precipitate here, I will say group 1 absent. So what is the group reagent here? The group reagent is dilute HCl. Please do not say that anything which has reagent term in it is a group reagent. Like I'll give you a very common example. See here, I have explained group 0 test. I don't know whether 0 will be there or not in my salt, but I told you start from 0 always, then 0 first, second, third. Sometimes we miss 0. We start with 1 and we never get the salt because it was so simple. It was just in the beginning which we missed. So group 0 first. Sodium hydroxide test. A pinch of salt is taken and you add NaOH solution to it and heat it. If you get the characteristic smell of ammonia, if you're confused that how ammonia smells, then very carefully you can just open the bottle of ammonium hydroxide, just take out the dropper and from a distance, don't go very close to any chemical, please. From a distance, you can, have that smell and understand, okay, this is the smell of ammonia. Right? If you get that particular smell of ammonia, then you can say group 0 may be present here. Then a glass rod dipped in dilute HCl is to be brought near the mouth of the test tube. It has to be done when the bubbles are still there in the test tube, when ammonia is still coming out. Because once it ceases, that means the whole NH3 has gone out. Now you will not get the result. So be very careful about such tests. Then you will see dense white fumes, which gives you the confirmation that yes, NH4 plus, there are chances. Some students say that it's confirmed here. I recommend Nessler's reagent test always to be doubly sure, because sometimes those dense white fumes, or it depends on your observation, that how many times you have done the test, how sure you are. So sometimes we say maybe dense white fumes are there, I'm not very sure. So it's better that you always carry out Nessler's reagent test for NH4 plus. You'll again take the pinch of salt, add NaOH, heat it, and then collect that gas and add Nessler's reagent to it. Or when you see the bubbles are coming, when the salt is being heated with NaOH, just take it away from the burner. Heating of every heating for every test should be done very carefully. You should not just keep on heating it continuously. Just keep it on flame, the test tube, for some time in the tilted position slightly away from everyone's face, and then keep on shaking it to dissipate that heat. Otherwise, everything will come out of the test tube. It will fall on the burner. It becomes difficult and maybe dangerous also. So for any kind of heating, when you are using the burner, be very careful. Take small quantity in the test tube first of all, then heat it slowly and keep removing it from the flame and shaking it. Okay, so when you see the bubbles are coming in this particular test, then take it away from the flame and immediately add Nessler's. You will see the brown precipitate on the walls of that test tube, because NH3 was going out and then it met Nessler's reagent on the way, so you get the precipitate then and there. Sometimes it becomes difficult to collect that gas, and then we keep on wasting time. So this is a way. So you get a reddish brown precipitate, it confirms NH4 plus. And write the symbols in typing. Sometimes it happens, subscript, superscript, some percentage errors are there, so always write proper symbols. So here I was lucky enough that I got ammonium carbonate, so I don't need to write any negative tests. I got first anion and first cation, and then I'll report the result. The given salt contains carbonate, acidic radical, and NH4 plus basic radical in it, or carbonate ion and ammonium ion in it, according to the language of the aim. No equations required here, nothing else. Just write systematically, one confirmatory after the preliminary, that's it. Let's take another example. In your exam, you will get only one salt. So I am taking another example. Suppose I do not get the ions in the first beginning tests. Then how to write it with the negative tests. So this slide is basically going to explain that. I'll start the same way. Test for acidic radicals, that is anions. You can write acidic radical or anion. No need to write both the things. I am writing it again and again so that it is there in your mind, fixed. First is dilute sulfuric acid group. We'll take small quantity of the salt and a test tube and add dilute sulfuric acid to it. If I do not get any fumes, I don't see any bubbles, how to write that? Students write no observation. Now that is 100% wrong. There may be no fumes or fumes, but no observation is nothing which we can write here. So never ever write that. You can write like this separately for all the four ions of this group, dilute sulfuric acid group. No brisk effervescence of CO2 obtained, so carbonate absent. No smell of burning sulfur, so sulfide absent. No smell of rotten egg, so S2 minus absent. And no brown colored gas, so NO2 minus absent. This I have written like this so that you remember it, that what should be the observation for which particular ion. Here you can write it in brief. You can simply write that if you do not get any bubbles, so you can write no gas evolved, and together in the inference you can write all the four symbols: carbonate, sulfite, sulfide, nitrite, absent, just that. Some students write white precipitate. That is also totally wrong. If you are taking a dry salt which is white in color and you're adding some liquid like sulfuric acid here and they're not reacting, so I cannot write a white precipitate is there. Precipitation is done when two clear liquids are mixed and you get a solid. Okay, so don't write no observation, don't write white precipitation. You do not, if you don't get any fumes, you can simply write no fumes evolved, and inference carbonate, sulfite, sulfide, nitrite absent, or like this, anyhow that you like. Now next is for concentrated H2SO4 group. To the small quantity of the salt, we'll add concentrated H2SO4. If I get any bubbles, suppose I get bubbles and I get the characteristic smell of vinegar. Everyone knows the smell of vinegar. It may be CH3CO minus, that is acetate. If I get a colorless gas, I can't see the gas, but I can see bubbles in the test tube, and it has a very pungent smell, then it may be Cl minus. It has to be Cl with a negative charge, which is not very visible here, like this. If I get reddish fumes, it may be Br minus. If I get brownish fumes, it may be NO3 minus. If I get reddish brown kind of fumes, I will write it may be Br minus or nitrate. If I get violet fumes, it's very clear it may be I minus, iodide. But if I do not get, as you can see, I have written no everywhere. If you do not get any one of them, then it shows that all these five ions are absent. So here also you can write together for all of them that no fumes evolved. So acetate, chloride, bromide, iodide, nitrate absent. Then I will carry out the test for sulfate, and if I don't get sulfate, then I'll go to phosphate. So for sulfate, we'll take the aqueous solution of the salt and add barium chloride solution to it. Just one test is enough. If we get a white precipitate, which is insoluble in concentrated HCl, I can say with confirmation that it is sulfate. So sulfate confirmed in this salt. If I don't get this, then I'll carry out the test for phosphate. So you have to remember the scheme. You have to remember all the tests. For sulfate also, if there is another test, then you can remember that, because in Viva anything can be asked. But for writing in the sheet, just one confirmatory is required. If you get the preliminary, like for PB2 plus, there are two confirmatory tests. If I get the preliminary test, I'll carry out any one confirmatory and report it. Once the acidic radical is identified, I'll start systematically for basic radical. In the same table, I'll continue group 0 first. If I don't get the smell of ammonia gas, I'll say group 0 absent. Then I'll take aqueous solution of the salt and add dilute HCl to it. If I get white precipitate, I can say that it may be PB2 plus, and I'll carry out the confirmatory for PB2 plus. But here I am not getting it, so I'll write white precipitate not obtained. So it is confirmed that group 1, which is Pb2 plus, is absent. Then in the same test tube, I will be passing H2S. Why? Because aqueous solution is already there, dilute HCl is already there, so I don't need to throw it. I'll just pass H2S through it, and I will, if I'm getting a black precipitate, I'll go for Cu2 plus. Here I am not getting, so this is confirm that second group is also absent. So these are called negative tests. I am doing it systematically, writing one by one. Group 0 is not there, 1 is not there, 2 is not there. These are called negative tests. I'll continue like this for group 3. I'll go. And in the table, you will get group reagents also. Like for group 1, it was dilute HCl. For group 2, it was dilute HCl plus H2S. For group 3, it is aqueous solution you will be taking, and the group reagent is solid ammonium chloride followed by ammonium hydroxide in excess. Excess does not mean that the test tube is to be filled up to the brim. Excess means take small quantity of everything, add NH4Cl, and then in comparison to that quantity of contents, it has to be in excess to make the medium basic. If you get reddish brown precipitate here, you will go for Fe3 plus confirmatory, just one test. If you get gelatinous white, you will go for the lake test of Al3 plus. If you do not get both of them, like here, I'll write group 3 also absent. Same way for group 4, NH4Cl, NH4OH in the aqueous solution plus H2S. So in the same test tube, you can add if you do not get group 3. If you get black colored precipitate, you can say it may be cobalt or nickel. If you get buff colored, very light pink, flesh colored, it may be Mn2 plus. If you get white precipitate, dirty white kinds, it may be zinc iron. But if you do not get any one of them, group 4 is also absent. Now notice one thing, everywhere NH4Cl and NH4OH are being used together. Common ion effect is being used here. This is a weak base and it's salt, so we call it buffer. So to maintain the pH, we add it. Group 5 test. Aqueous solution in the group reagent is ammonium chloride, ammonium hydroxide, followed by ammonium carbonate solution. And here, if you do not get a white precipitate, that means barium, strontium, calcium, all are absent. Sometimes what students do, they take the salt and they carry out flame test, because only group 5 cations they give the flame test, because their ionization enthalpy values are such that electron gets easily excited in the flame and you get the color. Green color, apple green for barium, and different shades of red for strontium and calcium. So it's good if you get it like that, but you cannot just write straight away. Even if you come to know by flame test that suppose barium is there, I get a green flame. I cannot straight away write that I did the flame test and I got it. There is a way of reporting your findings. You have to make the table properly, and then you have to write from the beginning 0 group 1, 2, 3, 4, then reach 5. Write about all this, that you got a white precipitate. Then you write the one confirmatory test for barium and then write the flame test. So here in the salt, I didn't get any one of them. So I have reached the end, group 6. It's going to have magnesium in it. So NH4Cl, NH4OH and basic medium basically. And you are adding disodium hydrogen phosphate or diammonium hydrogen phosphate, whichever is available in the lab. And then it will give you white precipitate immediately, which confirms there is Mg2 plus ion in it. So this is the test, only one test. Here I cannot say this is preliminary or confirmatory, just one test. So it is confirmatory. That is why I'm saying group 0 and group 6 do not have any group reagents. And then I'll report the result as I wrote the aim. The given salt contains sulfate acidic radical and Mg2 plus basic radical in it. Now the last part, experiment number 3. It may be chromatography. So I have taken an example of chromatography, and one after this is for functional group. So here I am repeating that you will get any one of the two titrations. You will get only one salt where one cation and one anion is to be identified, and you will get third experiment, which may be chromatography or functional group or any other minor experiment that you have done. The first two experiments are for 8 marks each. Titration for 8 marks and salt for 8 marks, and this one is for 6 marks. So it is total 22. and remaining 8 marks are divided into your viva, file, project, and all that. Okay, so here if you have to write the chromatography experiment, first you will write the apparatus. We are not writing the aim again and again because we have already written, and by chance even if you write the aim again here, there is no harm. So don't panic that I was not supposed to write it again. It's okay if you write, doesn't matter. Okay, now you should write after that the apparatus or the material required, all this as you have written in your file. Theory is a very important part in this also. So you will write chromatography is a technique used for analysis as you have written in your files, and principle of chromatography you must remember because this is generally asked in Viva, and then whenever such definitions or principle or any statement is asked, then we are always in a dilemma that how to answer that. So remember all this. So I was saying that in chromatography, after the apparatus or material required, you write the theory part, and this will be followed straight away by the observation table. So observations and calculations. This table is to be made nicely. Whenever you have to make any table for your titration experiment, for salt analysis, for this experiment, please use pencil scale and make proper tables. Okay, so you'll make this table. Components are Cu2 plus and Fe3 plus because we are carrying out the separation of these two salts, okay, using chromatography. So this you will carry out, and this column, next column would be distance traveled by the component. So here is an example. You must have pasted this chromatography strip in your file. Always paste the strip nicely. Please carry everything with you. Glue stick, pencil, scale, everything, so that you don't have to ask anyone for it. Okay, and you are very confident now. You know how to write these experiments, so there should not be any chance of writing anything wrong or getting confused about anything. So always write systematically. That will give you more confidence. And you should paste your chromatogram. Chromatogram is this strip which is ready, so we call it chromatogram, GRAM. So this chromatogram is to be pasted, and this is how you have to, using pencil and scale, write that how much is the distance traveled by the solvent. That will come here. So here it is 8.7. So for both, because solvent is common in both the boxes, 8.7 will come, and that I have to write here also, showing this line. And then distance traveled by Cu2 plus. Here the colors may not be very clear, but you can see your files yourself, and you know that here we made use of potassium ferrocyanide. First we took the strip, put a drop using capillary of the mixture here on this line, which we made, leaving 3-4 centimeter from the one end, okay, this horizontal line. And then on in the middle of this line, you'll put the dot of that mixture which is given to you. That mixture is of a copper salt and ferric salt, Fe3 plus. And then you take jar in which 50% alcohol and water mixture is taken, and you know how to hang it in the jar and leave it undisturbed for some time. When you see the paper is wet more than half, then you take it out and dry it. But when you do so, always put a mark here till where the paper was wet. Because after it dries, I am going to again dip it into K4FeCN6 solution to get these colors. It's a simple test which we carry out in salt analysis also, that Fe3 plus is going to give you the blue color, and Cu2 plus is going to give you the brown color. So brown color has traveled till here. Okay, so mark it from here to here and make a line. All the measurements are to be done from this starting line where I put the dot from here. It is not to be done from the edge of this paper, not from the end, lower end, not from here. I'm making everything very clear. Please follow all this, and work nicely. Okay, calculations are not to be done from the lower end of the paper. The measurements are to be done from this line. Everything is to be measured from here. And then the distance traveled by blue. Blue is visible here. After that, it is not visible. So this is the maximum distance traveled. Then you put the values here. Copper is brown color because Cu2 plus reacts with potassium ferrocyanide and gives me that particular color. 5.3 is the distance traveled, and for the Fe 1.6 is the distance traveled. So I'll complete the table like this, and then RF value is distance traveled by the component divided by the distance traveled by the solvent, retardation factor. So I hope everyone can do it now. You just have to divide this value by 8.7 and write the value here, and divide 1.6 by 8.7 and write that value here. Chromatography gives you the results. The RF values are always less than 1 because distance traveled by solvent is the maximum and it is in the denominator. So value can never be more than 1 for chromatography. Be very careful when you are reporting your result. Then simply write the result. The colored components were separated by chromatography, and RF values for blue spot and brown spot are this and this respectively. And then any two precautions, that the spot should be small and rich in mixture, that we give you the concentrated solution only, so it's going to be rich in mixture, and keep the strip erect. Do not let it be curled. If it curls, obviously the components will not rise nicely. You will not get the proper result. Do not allow the spot to dip in the solvent. It should be above that so that by capillary action the solvent travels and you get the results nicely. Allow the spot to dry before putting the strip in the jar. If you follow these, you'll get very good results. And here I'll mention again that only two precautions are required. So any two you can write if you get chromatography. Another example for experiment number 3. Suppose you get functional group test, and the functional group that I get, suppose I'm getting carboxylic. So what will I do? I don't know in the beginning whether it is carboxylic or something else. So I will take whatever functional group is given to me and I'll put a small quantity of litmus solution to it. I add 2-3 drops of litmus to it. Solution turns red, so it has to be phenolic or carboxylic. And if it doesn't turn red, I can say phenolic and carboxylic are absent. Then I'll carry out the test for other functional groups, aldehyde, etc. Here I am writing specifically for carboxylic, and you can write the same way for other functional groups. You will get any one functional group. You will get one organic compound and you have to identify one functional group in that. So I am writing it for carboxylic. Suppose I get carboxylic in my exam. So I'll write experiment number 3. Aim I have already written in the first sheet. So I'll start with material required and straight away make the observation table, and then litmus. So it may be phenolic or carboxylic. Then I'll carry out sodium bicarbonate test. I'll take small quantity of organic compound and add a pinch of, just sprinkle NaHCO3 solid on it. You get effervescence which confirms it is carboxylic. Or you can carry out ester test. Because it's a small experiment, so we always prefer that you write both of them. If for any functional group more than one test are given, write both of them. There is no harm. That's for 6 marks. And ester test is common for alcoholic group and carboxylic. So if you remember it once, then you know. And you already have done it in class 10th also, 11th also, 12th also, you studied about it. You take organic compound, add alcohol to it, 2-3 drops of sulfuric acid concentrated, and it is always to be warmed in a water bath. Why water bath? Because alcohol is highly volatile. So whatever test includes alcohol should be done in water bath only. And then after some time, it is expected that if it is carboxylic and I carry out the test like this, I'll get a fruity smell, which is sometimes difficult to identify because there is too much of acid, carboxylic acid or sulfuric acid. So too much of carboxylic acid, if it is there, I will not be able to identify. So that is why in the end we have to add sodium carbonate solution. You'll cool down the contents of the test tube which you have heated in water bath, and then pour it in 10 ml of aqueous Na2CO3 solution so that extra acid is neutralized and you get proper fruity smell. If you carry out this test, you'll be easily able to find out that this is carboxylic. Then you can simply report this test, or if you want to carry out this also, there is no harm, you can easily do it. Just follow the steps and you will be able to identify. Then you write the result. The given organic compound contains carboxylic functional group in it, and 2 precautions: that if a solid organic compound is given to you, always use aqueous solution. And in ester test, heating should be done in water bath. I told you the reason. Wherever you're making use of alcohol, never heat it straight away. It's highly volatile. It catches fire. So heat it carefully in water bath. So that is all about this presentation. I hope it will help you in Viva also, and specifically how to write the experiments nicely. All the best. Don't panic. You will definitely do very well. Just practice writing the experiments the way I just told you. Thank you so much.